Hi, my name is Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to be just setting up this. It's an Epson ET-2850 that I've been sent to have a look at. Now, somebody from Epson kindly set it up and tested it before they sent it, rather than sending it out unset up. However, I'm going to go through the process I do about setting a printer up like this. Now, I'm going to be doing a review of this, and I'm going to be testing different papers, looking at it, looking at what the quality of print you get out of it. It's an EcoTank printer, so the ink comes in bottles that you fill up. You can see some little bits at the front here which show you the levels. I tested the ET-8550 a while ago and was very impressed by it and worked well. That's a 6-ink printer which has a mix of dye inks and a black pigment ink, so it's quite different to this. This is a fairly basic printer, so in many ways I'm not expecting to get the similar results out of it. It's also a smaller printer. It'll only do A4 size paper rather than the previous one, which is 13-inch, but I think it should be capable of getting some good results. Now, I'm going to be doing tests and things, so come back and have a look if you're curious about more, and I'll have a written review of the printer as well. So, printer. How do we go about setting it up? Well, as if it was a new one, it has lots of tape to remove to start with. Now, if this was an absolute brand new printer, this would take me considerably longer to find all the bits of tape, but they do collect about, and so essentially start off with your printer, remove every single bit of tape from it. And also, I really dislike these sticky labels that come on printers, so that one can go as well. Now, this one it's a printer, and it has a flatbed scanner, smaller scanner than the 8550, so it's a fairly basic home office printer. Let's see what we can actually get out of it. Oh, and I'll take a bit of plastic off the screen there as well. Has a screen. It's not a huge screen. Remember, this is a fairly basic printer, so you can't expect too much in the way of fancy features and things. Now, I've got lots of printer reviews I've looked at. Normally I tend to look at much bigger printers than this, but for this one here, we'll see what we can get out of it. But I've gone, you can set this up from a phone actually. There's instructions in here, and you can go, and it will guide you through the things from a phone. But I don't use phones for stuff like that. I will try printing from a phone on it just to see how well it works, but it's not something I'd ever normally do. I've gone to the epson.sn site. I've put in the model number, that's the full model number, ET-2850. Put that in, and it's come up with a 2850 series, and we've got a welcome on it. Now, I'm just going to go through these. The setup page, I'm not going to go because I know it's got ink in it. But what you do is you look at, for something like this, first of all, we need to prepare the printer. Now, that is unpacking all the tape. There's no tape in there, so that's okay. Go through the tape, all the various items and that. I can go through this, and this tells you about removing protective stuff. Look inside that everything is free inside it. The actual printer mechanism, you lift the lid to get to here. Yeah, it looks fairly clean. Nothing untoward has happened on its way from Epson to here. But go through that. Remove the protective, fill up the ink tanks. Now, the ink tanks are loaded at the front here. You lift that up, lift that, there are the ink tanks. Now you go through, fill these up, you put it in, the ink drains through, it fills up each tank, go through them in sequence, black, yellow, magenta, cyan, go through them, it will drain, it will fill, it won't overfill. Thing is, you will get some ink left over afterwards. And the idea is that some ink is going to be used up filling the lines, the print head, doing a bit of testing, various things like that. So there is some ink left, so it's worthwhile filling up the ink afterwards, after you've done it, using that residual ink should just top up the levels here. These, I can see, they're all fairly full. This has been set up and nothing much has been done with it. But there we go. These are the little bits. You just lift up the tabs here, and there's the ink, and you just put the bottle in, and it goes. Follow the details here. There is a video as well. There's all kind of help to make sure you can do it. Just go through the process. step your way through the process as it shows here, and you shouldn't go far wrong. I've never had a problem in setting up one of these printers, a new one from that, and these ones are designed to be simple. Push that back there, and there we go, that's that. Notice I haven't powered it up at all. Now in the instructions here, you go through this, you go through the filling, and then it's time to plug it in and turn it on. It will then do its process of whirring away for 15-20 minutes while it shunts ink through all the various lines, pipes inside, does everything, does all its initial testing and things. And it's at that point you'll get some questions asked on the screen here where you can enter stuff. So you can set up the printer. And we've got here, start the ink initialization. It says, and don't turn the printer off. Unplug it whilst it's doing the initialization. If there's one point you can really mess up a printer, it's pulling the power on it in the middle of its initial setup and initialization. They really do not like it. Sometimes they'll restart and you'll just end up using lots more ink, wasting ink, which this does have a maintenance cartridge in, so waste ink goes to that. It doesn't go into pads underneath, so you can replace the maintenance cartridges eventually, but they usually last a long while for normal printing. So we go through the initialization and load up a sheet of paper, and it will run some tests. Now the nice people at Epson have kindly sent me some test prints when they set it up, and do an initialization and an adjustment. Now you don't have to do the head adjustment when you first set the printer up, but I always do it then. I recommend doing it because it just adds to the print quality. The area it makes the biggest difference from is that if you print at the very highest quality, the print head will go one direction across the paper, spraying ink down, and then it'll return, the paper will be advanced, and then it'll do another spray, and so on. That's unidirectional printing. If you want it to print faster and the more economy modes of printing, it prints bidirectional, so it sprays ink that way, advances the paper, sprays ink with the head going back the other way, so it goes backwards and forwards across here. The mismatch between those two is one of the things that you're adjusting out when you set up the printer here. So there we go, we've got that, we'll load it up, get it, check the paper size. You do have to set the paper size on here. Set that up, and away we go, and we can do a printer alignment. There we go, at the end of it, it says refill the tanks with the remaining ink, and that's it. So you've got that configured to test out with that. Now, the bit I'm most interested in, it says you're interested for the next stage, is actually getting it to work via a computer. Now I'm going to use wireless connection here. It will work with USB. Doesn't have an Ethernet connection that I've been able to find. I don't think there is one on there anywhere. But so it will work with wireless. I'm going to set it up here on this Mac. Now, one of the things I want to show on this, and it's very similar for PCs, and you just go through the software. One of the things I want to show here is to make sure you do not accidentally on Macs install the AirPrint driver. Now the AirPrint driver has no use whatsoever for normal printing from a computer. The AirPrint driver may be fine for phones and iPads and the like, but essentially the fact that you're using the AirPrint driver almost says you've given up any hope of high quality, accurate printing. It just doesn't support it, or at least not in the current implementations I've got. Now, I've got a much newer Mac than this one, which I'll also be setting this up on, which is running the latest Mac OS 13 or Ventura. And I'm going to set it up on that one as well for some testing, just to make sure that I can get it to work on an oldish Mac here and also on a current system as well, just to make sure it all works. As I say, PC stuff is almost the same as this, but you don't have to worry about the AirPrint driver. So we've got this, you're now ready for the next stage. Install the printer software on your Mac and connect to the printer. Right, well, we'll download that. Time passes. Didn't take much. Just opening up the installer, and here is the installer. This is the setup software, and it says double click, so that's what I've done. The usual warnings that it was downloaded. Yes, I'm going to open it. We get the Epson installer software running. Put a password into it, and we get a license agreement, all the usual stuff. There is no bonus points for being the only person that will actually read this stuff. You get a choice of whether to allow software usage information to be collected. I don't run that on this system because I don't want more bits of software. This is an old Mac, and I don't want to load it up with extraneous bits of software. It's up to you whether you want to decide that for usage. And product usage, software usage, you don't have to select any of these things. Thank you. Have you finished? Reminds you here at this point, have you finished filling all the ink tanks? Make sure the printer is turned on. Well, I'm going to plug it in here at the back. Let's turn it on. It's going to start up. Screen is quite small. Now, to read any detail on this, I will need stronger reading glasses. All the usual whirring sounds you get from printers when they start up. Screen there looks good, but I honestly cannot read any detail of it with these, which are my medium distance computer using glasses. So if you do have visual issues, this screen is tiny, so just bear that in mind. It seems to be running, it seems to be doing things. Running a few tests. Well, there we go. I have finished. I have to actually say this. Now, if you try doing these things out of sequence, most of the time it will correct it, but you do need to actually follow the instructions. I used to just set up printers on the grounds that, yeah, I knew what I was doing. After getting it slightly wrong a few times, not causing any damage, but just slightly wrong doing that, I actually make a point of reading the instructions, because the more printers, they're all slightly different. So you always find there's something you need to do. So here, I'm going to click that I have finished that. I'm going to go to next. And it's now checking the network. Now, this particular Mac is wirelessly connected at the moment. There's my test airport devices over there, so it should have no trouble in finding a connection at all. Connect via a wireless network. Yeah, I could connect by USB cable if I wanted here, but I'm going to connect via wireless. Checking the system, and it's going to offer me, you can set this. There are lots of different ways you can connect up to wireless networks. I'm not going to go into all the details of it here, but follow the instructions. It should allow you to just normally connect. You may need your password for the wireless network, but it should be possible for you to get an automatic connection. Select Wi-Fi setup on the home screen. And here we have the problem of the tiny little screen. Quiet mode settings. Wi-Fi setup. I've moved it here to the bit here. I'm going to go OK. Now I've just pressed OK on that, and I'm just going to tell this to go to next. Connect to Wi-Fi. It's got here, it says OK proceed, and it's on here as well. Yeah, so we'll just click OK, and it's attempting to connect. And it has indeed selected our network. And it wants a password. Well, a few minutes passed there because it wouldn't auto-identify my network. Now, this could be because this is not the first time this machine has been set up. It's why when I ask for machines to review, I normally ask for an unopened box so I can go through the whole process and show you exactly what's happened. Anyway, I had to enter the wireless password. No great problem for this one here. It's on a post-it note stuck on the side of the one here because I use it for testing. It's just a test network. A bigger problem was the text on this display. Hence a magnifying glass. I needed to get a magnifying glass out to find one of the punctuation, one of the special characters I'd used in the password for this to actually get it to work up. So, participate in future design of Epson products. I don't think so. Let's go on here. Next. Now, After having gone through this, it's now telling me that it could actually automatically connect. It wasn't entirely clear. So if you're connecting to wireless and you get problems, go back through this and follow the instructions here and see if you can get it to automatically connect rather than remotely having to actually use this keyboard here to try and enter text onto it, because it is tiny text. And genuinely, without finding my special reading glasses, yeah, right, okay, we won't bother with that one. Wi-Fi is set up according to this, says it's connected, so one would hope that the network setup will find it fairly soon. There we are, after another run through it. I now have, it has found this on the network. It's hardly difficult, there's about this much between you. So 2850 wireless LAN. There we go, we'll go on next on that. And it's now setting things up, allows you to set network configuration. Most of these things, unless you know exactly what you're doing, just follow the instructions here. If it doesn't connect automatically, there are other ways of connecting to wireless boxes. Have a look at the help here. Now, it's offering to install software for me. We've got the printer driver, obviously I want, so I can print from it. It's also going to install the scanner plugin for this, which is the scanner driver. I don't really need the manuals and various other stuff. I'll install those on another machine for when I'm using it and actually testing things. So we'll just go for install there, and it's going to download the printer driver and install the various bits it needs. Now, you may be wondering why I'm showing you all this faffing about and various details. It is, if I make mistakes when I'm doing these things, I like to, as long as I don't think they're actually going to mislead people, I like to leave them in videos as much as anything to show that even with all the printers I set up and different things I set up, the setup process does not always a smooth, process that just goes without any issues. I had not expected, for example, to have to enter the password in on this tiny little screen, and you may have realized by now that it's the first time I've used the printer, and I've deliberately chosen to do this, as in just take it out of the box and try it, that this screen is going to be an ongoing irritation for me if I have to use it. The screen on the 8550 and the bigger printers, it's nice, but this one, all the details there, it is just postage stamp sized. So this is a problem on smaller printers of all sorts. I've come across it before when I've looked at printers. So just, it's one of those things that if, like me, you need glasses for your close-up vision, make sure you've got them at hand. So it's installing software, installing the scanner driver. Fans on my laptop are whirring away nicely, suggests it's doing something. These devices normally are pretty easy to set up. The problems, whenever I've had problems connecting to a network, it's almost always been when I've installed a printer that has come from somewhere else. So if it's been set up, it's been tested, this has been set up at Epson, and because of that it's got certain things that it thinks it can, and I'm trying to override that and reinstall it. So it's worth thinking, if you get a new printer, this should be considerably easier. But if you get a printer that someone else has had, you get a second-hand printer, one that's, if it's already got ink in it, then there's a chance it's been set up. You may have to go through this process a few times just to make sure. Now, it's got up here about adding a printer, and it's pulled up the printer dialog here, and to add one, and I'm going to add a printer, and it gives me details. You can follow it through here. So I'm just going to click on here for adding a printer. And it comes up, it tells me nearby printers, Epson 2850. That's great. I'll click on that, and it's preparing that. Now, the reason I've done this is because it has, and it's quite reasonable that you would just click on this nearby printers and it has gone and installed the AirPrint driver. If you're using a printer like this and suddenly you find that you haven't got anywhere near the number of controls and settings available on your printer driver that you thought should be there, then it's quite possible that you've accidentally set up the AirPrint driver. So that is of no use whatsoever. So I will delete that. Let's just click on Add Printer. Now, this is what you should do, but I know that some people will just see the 2850 there and click on it. Lo and behold, you've got the AirPrint printer driver set up. Good for nothing. So now I've got the different versions of the printer driver. Now, these are current printers that are switched on the network. So it's got Karen's printer upstairs is showing on here as well. 2850 series, brackets IP. I'm going to use that one connection. It's the connection I use on this big Epson P5000 over here. I'm going to use that. It doesn't say AirPrint. So I go that, I'll go add, and it's going to set up the printer. And it's now added that printer. So I'm going to go to here, options and suppliers. Let's see what it thinks of the supply levels, and it tells me it's pretty full. Now, remember that with these particular printers, there is no sensors to tell the printer how much ink there is in these carts. It's up to you to keep an eye on it. Now, the printer will give you an estimate of when it thinks it's running low, but when you top up the ink, you top up the ink to the top mark on it, and then you have to tell the printer that you've topped it up. You have to actually go through that process and reset the pointers, as it were, because the printer itself has got no direct way of knowing how much ink is in these tanks. So just bear that in mind. It should be quite difficult to run these dry, but you do need to keep notice of it. So I've got that. It tells me that it's got a fair bit of ink. Utility, I'm going to print a test page. Let's have a look. Let's put a piece of paper in the back here. Some convenient paper. There we go. That's set for some A4 paper in there. I'm just going to check on here, and it's a little message has come up. Oh, was the little message. Confirm A4 plain paper. Yes, I'm going to confirm that for that. And we're going to print test page. That's a good sign. It made a clicking noise. And there we are, one printed page. Now, I'm going to leave it at that. I've got it set up. If you've got any queries about this, please do mention, please ask questions on the video. Things I might have forgotten to notice, other features and things, but I will be coming back to this. I'm going to be making some profiles, I'm going to be making prints and doing lots more things on this printer. But there we go. A little bit longer than I'd hoped for, and it's running, so it's up and going, and one more printer to test. Thanks for watching. Ask questions on anything. If you look at the videos, please do subscribe to the channel. Certainly will keep you up with updates as to when I bring out stuff with this. I have another printer to look at as well after this, which is the A4 version of the 8550 I reviewed last year. So I'm going to be having a look at that as well. No doubt that's been set up. Now I know that one has a bigger screen on it. So there we go. The magnifying glass will be living here next to this so I can read it. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Hope it's been of help.